All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. As always, we're thinking about you, Sean.
Hmm.
I know Sean had they had the benefit concert um, Saturday at Two Brew Crew. I meant to look this evening before I got on. I do not know what the final total was or if they even mentioned it. Let's see. No, I don't see anything other than the announcement of the thing. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Till 9 p.m. Yeah, nothing new other than that. I do know he was supposed to have had surgery, his first surgery, a skin graft, but I do not know the outcome of that yet. Kevo has actually been my source for a lot of this, so I need to uh, get in touch with him and find out how Sean is doing. But and I'll find out the totals on that. But as always, Sean, our prayers are with you.
Yeah.
Um, you can come on the other side of this. You're gonna make it. So
Oh yeah.
praying for you, brother. Get on here, get healthy, get on here, and really feel the love. um, in the meantime, let me ask you this: as a purely nonpartisan football fan who is in England, and your only experience of American football is what you see on television and those occasional games where Jacksonville seems to be the team you're hosting all the time. Was this a good game for somebody who didn't care about the outcome?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was. I think it was a very entertaining game. Uh,
Mhm.
Now, if I'm a novice football fan, I am extremely confused at and we'll certainly get into more of this tonight. I'm certainly confused at why things are get called on one team but not the other, or in this situation, but not that situation. So I'm very confused by the way the outcome happened. But uh, but as far as the game entertainment value wise, I thought it was an extremely entertaining game.
And I thought it was fitting that you had kicks to kind of decide this
Yeah.
game for a soccer stadium and a culture that's used to soccer. Yeah, I uh, I thought, and this is going to sound funny because it was in a loss, but I thought it was probably the best played game by the Saints this season so far this season.
From
Uh,
start to end, I agree with that.
yeah, I thought with Dalton and you don't have an injured Jameis Winston. Dalton seemed to run that offense very well. Got the ball out quickly, made good decisions, good accurate throws. Even threw a couple deep shots. That
Mhm.
shot to Olave with 24 seconds left. That was thank you. That was an impressive throw
Yeah.
because there was like four people around there, and he
Mhm.
dropped it right in the hole. Um, if he only could have completed, or Chris Olave could have kept his feet in both feet in bounds,
That
just I know, and I thought he dragged it before he caught it because at regular speed,
yeah.
I'm like, oh no, he dragged that foot because I saw the turf kick up. I'm
Hmm.
like, no, he dragged that foot. He got it in,
Hmm.
but no, he dragged it before he caught the ball. So, um, but yeah, if we get just one of those passes, you know, just 3 yards closer, that's a makeable field goal, and we go to overtime. I was impressed with that composure, but at the same time, I'm also thinking how many chances we gave the Vikings in the red zone, and we were lucky that the defense stiffened enough to hold them to field goals to keep us in the game because
Yeah.
one touchdown, that game is blown open.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it was the special teams that consistently gave the Vikings, well, the special teams and the third team that was wearing the black and white striped uniforms. They consistently gave the Vikings good field position to put the Saints defense back against the wall. So it wasn't Jameis Winston in the offense turning the ball over. It was Deontay Hardy and the special teams, kick coverage and punt coverage breakdowns. Things like that. A fake punt, a fake down punt. It was those things that that caused the New Orleans defense to be backed against the wall. But like you pointed out, they rose to the occasion. As stiffened when necessary, even got a turnover out of it.
Yeah, I mean, Honey Badger, that was a beautiful interception. That's the kind of play I've been waiting for him to make since he joined the Saints. I thought Demario Davis, after I was kind of critical of him for being an invisible man, really in the first couple of games, really stepped up to play, helped shut down Dalvin Cook, because I was terrified that Dalvin Cook would get going and we would really have trouble all game. But they shut him down. I mean, disappointing thing, Justin Jefferson just tore up Lattimore. He really just Lattimore. He's a shutdown corner, but he's a shutdown corner against big physical receivers. Burners will eat him up. Generally, I think that's not a criticism of him, but I'm not looking forward to seeing Jamar Chase against him.
No,
need safety help over the top to deal with a guy like that. I think that was his issue, and because Marcus May wasn't in the game, you had T.J. Williams in there, you had Justin Evans in there. No one has the speed to really, in the safety position, to really help him out, cover over the top. We're about to talk about this in a second. After getting called for hands to the face, which the dude is so short. I mean, he's so short, he'd have to reach up to get hands to the face. It's just Mike Pereira. Okay, we'll bring it up now. Mike Pereira on that call, he's just like, I got nothing. I wouldn't have made that call. And he said the same thing about the interference call because, yes, Lattimore was interfering, but he was trying to turn his head, but he couldn't because Adam Thielen's got his face mask in his hand. So, I mean, and like Mike Pereira said, I probably would have just let that go as two guys fighting for the ball, which is how I saw it. Originally, it was two guys fighting for the ball. The ball's underthrown. So, you're going to slow up, run into the guy. I didn't see until the slow motion that, Lattimore gets his hands. But again, okay, you're going to call it that way. And I'm going to use my basketball analogy. You're going to call it on that side of the court that way. The next series, there's Chris Olave. They've got his arm pulled back. So he has to reach with one arm, not two. Not a flag to be seen. Not a flag to be had. Even Olave is like looking around like, hey, this is interference. If you're going to call that interference, this is interference too. And the same with the, Ruiz getting called for ineligible man downfield because that's a screen pass. It was very slow developing, but he wasn't. Ingram still caught the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and he is going. So it's not really an ineligible man down the field. And just the drive before, for the touchdown. There's a Vikings player, a good 4 or 5 yards down the field, laying into Pete Werner, blasting him into the out of bounds, and yeah, no old man downfield. I mean, how do you? I know you're smiling. You just want to vent, but yeah, we make it. Like I said, we make enough mistakes. Okay, we
Right.
turn the ball over. Our special teams turn the ball over. Deontay Harding. We're going to talk about a little bit about him in a minute. Dalton, it's a fumble, but you know what? I mean, 9 times out of 10, quarterbacks who get caught from behind like that, they probably fumble too. So I'm not. I mean, I wasn't happy about it because it's inside the Saints 30. It's 3 free points.
And Dalton, being the veteran that he is, should have felt that pressure and got rid of it. That was my problem.
Mm-hmm. So, it's still a turnover. But like I said, we turn the ball over enough. We make enough mistakes to keep other teams in the game. We don't need the officials putting their thumbs on the scales and to make sure. And it's not just the Saints. And we talked a little bit about this off the air. New England versus Green Bay. Almost 2 full seconds pass before the Patriots call play and run and score a touchdown on that play. So they missed that call. Romo talks about it. Jim Nantz talks about it. They all pointed out. You had that play. You had a play the Kansas City Tampa game with a horrible call. And people make jokes all the time about ref ball. So and yes, I agree with you too, Jimmy Gumbo. I've always said this. It needs to go back to being a 15-yard penalty, or it needs to go to a 15-yard penalty like it is in college, because it's the most devastating penalty. I can kill the quarterback, but the penalty they'll take is if on that play, if I take my forearm and just waylay into Tom Brady and knock him and make him think he's Batman and drive him to the turf, that's only a 15-yard penalty. But if he throws that pass and I hit him after that for roughing the passer, but Lattimore bumps into him trying to catch the ball, which penalty are they going to take? Their quarterback's passed out, unconscious on the field. They got to take the 80-yard penalty, get it first and goal. So it's just that's going to change. So.
And you mentioned 5 penalties that were egregious. You mentioned it before we went on the air, but you didn't mention just now, Calvin Throckmorton doing what offensive linemen are taught to do when a defender jumps into the neutral zone, is move to draw that play, kill the play, get you 5 yards for your team. And even the entire Minnesota Vikings team looked around in shock and awe when the penalty was called on the Saints. The pass interference on Lattimore. Night, sweetie. I love you.
Night, Will.
The pass interference on Lattimore and not Thielen. Look at the beginning of the play. 2 things I want to point out, and one of them is going to make me sound like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but I don't care. The right end on that play, which I believe was Cam Jordan, but don't quote me on that. But the right end on that play had his jersey almost yanked off coming around the edge. And as Cousins threw the ball, the yellow flag icon in the corner of the TV screen lit up. So I thought it's going to be holding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, we know what it ended up being. So in other words, now that's on the TV screen. But they showed the penalty flag on the TV screen before Lattimore and Thielen were even in view. Now, not in view. Yeah, it's still obviously in view of the refs. And it's arguable. I've watched that. I've gone back and watched that play 3 times. I can't watch it a 4th. I'll hang myself. It's possible that the flag icon came up on the TV before Cousins even threw the ball. Someone will have to educate me on that. But like I said, on that play, everybody's all fired up about the interference, and rightfully so. But look at the right end; he almost got his damn jersey yanked off. And I'm when I wrote my article on my thumbs up, thumbs down, which pains me to write. I'll write game ball articles after a Saints win.
Mm-hmm.
I write a thumbs up, thumbs down after a loss because it was strongly suggested that I do some sort of game recap. I'll leave it at that. My second thumbs down, and I wasn't allowed to title this particular piece thumbs down, or excuse me, thumbs up, middle finger up, because that's what I wanted to do, but I had to ask permission and I got denied. My thumbs down, my second thumbs down in that article was the officiating. And Alan, I know you read a lot of my stuff. Viewers, I know you guys read a lot of my stuff. I tried to be as professional as I could. I did not use 2 or 3 of the C words, and no, not that C word that I wanted to use. But I described it. People talk about, the officials are unprofessional. The officials are incompetent. The officials are inefficient. No, it's none of that stuff. It's a lot darker than that. It's a lot more sinister than that. And you cannot convince me otherwise. There is no way in hell that you can convince me otherwise. And the C words I'm talking about, I could say it here. I can't write it in a Sports Illustrated article. They are cheating and corruption. And I'm not, and you say this all the time too, Alan. It's not against the New Orleans Saints. I'm not sitting here saying the world is against the New Orleans Saints or Goodell is against the. No. Well, Goodell might be against the New Orleans Saints, but the world is not against the New Orleans Saints. The reason, ladies and gentlemen, why this will not change, and I don't get into it with people about this needs to change. Yeah, it needs to change, but guess what? It's not going to. Not as long as the man that's in office is in office, because this is exactly what he wants. The way this system is set up is to protect the Patrick Mahomes, the Tom Brady's, the Aaron Rodgers, the Bill Belichick, the crybabies, the whiners, and the people, the players or faces or teams that Goodell wants to make the face of the NFL. The New Orleans Saints are most certainly not one of those. In fact, the New Orleans Saints are what? A chief rival of who? Tom Brady. A conference rival of who? Aaron Rodgers. So, no, I don't think that the real assassinator of the Queen of England, Roger Goodell, is against the New Orleans Saints solely. But this entire system is set up, is stacked against teams like the Saints only because they aren't Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, et cetera, et cetera. That's my spiel.
Well, to me, DraftKings, BetMGM, fantasy football, the money that these things generate, I think enters the equation. And I've called it this way for a couple of years now. I feel that they throw certain flags at certain times as a keep it close.
Absolutely.
New England was down to their third quarterback. Western Kentucky's Zappy, I forgot his first name, but kid from Western Kentucky, rookie quarterback. Brian Hoyer got knocked out of the game. Mac Jones already wasn't playing. That game should have gotten out of hand by the second half, by the beginning of the second half. That game, and when I was a kid, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but I know that's why Bailey Zappi, okay, my son wanted us to draft him so they could sell Zap potato chips with his image on it. So because Zap's a local flavor, but when I was a kid, there were games where after a certain point, they said, we're going to switch over to a more competitive game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you would get, instead of getting, I don't know, Dallas and the Jets, and Dallas is just killing the Jets, they'll swap over to, I don't know, a Browns Bengals game, a Steelers Oilers, and I'm dating myself by using that team's
Right.
name. Yeah, switch over to one of those kind of games because it's more competitive. We don't see that anymore.
Nope.
You really, I mean, you'll see some one-sided games, but it's almost Madden-esque if you're playing the computer on the rookie level, where you're playing and then the bullshit starts.
Yeah.
And and the team starts coming back. Now, I haven't played Madden, and good God, I haven't played, in fact, I haven't played video games, period, probably since in 12 years, 2010, 2009, I think was the last time I played Madden. But yeah, and that one of the reasons why, because my wife, because I got so emotionally into it, I'm like, what kind
Mm-hmm.
of bullshit is
Uh-huh.
this? And I'm going, oh, this is bull. I kept saying, it's
Uh-huh.
like, why do you get so upset? It's a video game. I'm like, I'm kicking their ass. And now suddenly I can't do anything and they're completing everything, So that's how it feels because there are games that I've watched that the Saints are playing in that if they get this call or if this happens, this game's going to get out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I go back to the no call game. The no call happens, that game is over.
Yep.
Over. There was even with 2 timeouts, there's no way that the Rams have enough time to get down the field and kick Calvin, you ain't missing a thing. That game hasn't changed. Oh, this is 2009.
I've heard. I've heard that too. It's been almost that long for me.
Yeah, but yeah, that happens. That play happens. It's 1st and goal. The Saints can take a knee twice, make the Rams burn their timeouts, run a play, let the clock go all the way down to less than 20 seconds, kick the field goal, and the Rams are going to have to go down the field with no timeouts to get in field goal range. Is it possible? Possible, but not very likely. Not at an NFC Championship game.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't make that call. Now the Saints have to kick the field goal at this point. And now the Saints defense has to protect against 2 timeouts and a minute and some change left. Okay? Keep it close. The game is still within reach for them. So, yeah, that's what I see happening in these games. In the New England game, I certainly felt that calls were timed at a certain point in the game to keep it close, and it drives me crazy. I see it played over and over and over again. And it just, I think between the gambling and this, that's why you see the ultimate parity game. People are going to stay watching, and fantasy football participants want to see high scoring games. They want to see games where their players can still produce. And I think they call the game accordingly. That's just how it feels.
I think that that's the other side of my seesaw, and I do think it's pretty evenly balanced because not every single NFL game is going to feature an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady, etc. So the betting lines, fantasy football, DraftKings, all that stuff you just mentioned, keeping the games close. Because with this day and age of direct TV and all other streaming services, you literally never see a network switch off a game anymore. It just doesn't happen. So they need to keep the viewer. They feel they need to keep the viewers tuned in. I'm
sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I must have somebody, from, watching this show. They just texted me on my work phone. They said, somebody I work with showed me the clip of the Ruiz um, ineligible man downfield, and Jeff Duncan talking about how they botched the call. So he must be watching the show. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought that was
Well,
funny.
thank you for watching the show. Now jump to the end of the game and see if I was right about that flag and the hold on that
Oh yeah,
pass
I'm gonna go
interference.
back and watch that.
But yeah, let me know how right I was, please, because if I'm wrong, I'm man enough to admit it, but I ain't wrong here.
Jimmy Gumbo, they're not allowed. They're fined because they do not want
No.
to have coaches question the integrity of the game.
Yes.
That's all part of it. You're not
Mhm.
allowed to do that because not even owners can't even do it
Nope.
either. They want you to just swallow it. And I can tell you, and well, I'm sorry, I just totally disrupted your
It's okay.
train of thought here, but I can go back to as far back as okay. Let's go back to 1980, the Ain't season. Okay, that is a true baghead season. 1980 went 1-15. Fourth that season, and you can watch it on YouTube. And I brought it up in here before. Saints versus Dolphins. The Saints are winning this game in the first half because David Woodley is playing quarterback, and he's terrible. Okay, this is why they draft Dan Marino in 1983. He's terrible. Um, Bob Greasy comes in. This is Bob Greasy's last year in the league. Bob Greasy comes in, and he gets the Dolphins to roar back. It's less than, I want to say, a minute left in the game, and the Dolphins either turn the ball over or they botch a punt or whatever, and the Saints get the ball with no timeouts left, like 30 seconds left in the game, and this is in the old Orange Bowl. They got a chance to win. Archie Manning throws a touchdown pass to Ike Harris in the end zone. The Saints should have won that game. That was week 4 of 1980. But they call offensive pass interference on Ike Harris. You can watch that play 1,000 times, and you'll never see Ike Harris fully extend his arm to get the offensive pass interference call. After the game is over with, and this is why I brought it up, Jimmy Gumbo. After the game is over, 2 days later, the league says, "Oh yeah, our bad. That shouldn't have been pass interference. That should have been an eligible touchdown." Well, you can't change the outcome of the game. You can't go back and say, no, because it was the final play of the game. You can't go back and say, oh, sorry, Dolphins, you actually didn't win the game. We should have given the Saints this touchdown. And that's one of the most egregious examples I can think of where, that is direct change in the outcome of a game. That's a touchdown. Saints win. No time left. Nobody has a chance to come back. They don't get it. 78, same thing, 20-17. They lose the Falcons. They call the Saints for pass interference when on Ralph McGill when Maurice Spencer picks off the pass for a touchdown in the end zone to shut down the Falcons' drive. They give them an untimed down, and the Falcons score a touchdown, win that ball game. That was the difference between the 78 Saints going to the playoffs, having a winning season, or losing and going to 7-8, 7-9. So, I mean, it's one of those things. I hate when people tell me, well, the calls, it really doesn't matter. You play better than the officials and all the, it doesn't make a difference. It does when you look at when these penalties happen.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand, and we talked a little bit about this off the air. I don't understand why the league, and I know your answer to this, but why the league doesn't take advantage of the technology of today. I mean, college football does, where they can buzz the official and say, hey, you want to take another look at this play. You need to take a look at this play and see, is this really pass interference? Did this guy get his feet in? All these things, they just don't do that. They don't. It's final. We try to do let's challenge pass interference calls. The officials deliberately sabotage that, so they can prove that, you know what, it's pointless to challenge because you're going to lose every time because we're still the final arbiters. So,
Right.
yeah, it's frustrating. All right. Penalties aside, we
Yes,
mentioned
please.
this. Yeah, we mentioned the Saints are sabotaging their own season anyway.
Yeah.
What's This is such a wide open question, but what do you think are the primary factors that are hurting the Saints this season?
You're right. It is, yeah, because there are so many boxes to check.
Mm-hmm.
And even with as many boxes as you and I could possibly list together, if you put a box at the bottom, the cheat box that says all of the above, that's the box that has to be checked. The main two culprits, and it's still a general blanket that I'm going to give you. The main two culprits are coaching and the lack of consistent performance from the team's established stars. That's where it starts. After that, you can point fingers at the quarterback play, the offensive line, turnovers, John Butler, a discipline which comes from it. Well, that's it. Discipline, sloppy play, and poor execution. What are the three driving factors, or what are the two main driving factors for those three things? Poor coaching and poor performance by the team's stars, players of top tier caliber who have been there for years. So that's why no matter what we do, I could ultimately keep circling around to those two things: the team's top stars and poor coaching. Again, I realize it's a cop out. It's a blanket statement on my part, but that's really what it is. That's really my view of it.
Turnovers is on, to me, it's on the players.
It is.
99.9% of the time, I'm going to put it on the players because the coaches, I mean, going back to, Pop Warner football, you're taught how to protect the football.
Mm-hmm.
And players carrying the ball away from their body or players holding the ball out too far. And they do it a lot when they try and reach for that first down and everything else by pushing that ball forward. They're exposing the ball to get it knocked out. And same with quarterbacks throwing interceptions. 99.9% of the time, they're throwing an interception is a bad decision making. You're trying to put the ball somewhere where you shouldn't have. Now, sometimes defensive players make a hell of a play, and you just don't see it. Because you're unlike what people think happens out there. Most quarterbacks are throwing to a spot. They're not throwing to the open guy. This is not backyard football where make a cut at the Pontiac and I'll hit you. It doesn't work that way. They've got a clock in their head because every offense is built on timing. They've got a clock in their head. They know how many seconds it's going. If you go back to watching a Football Life with Joe Montana, Bill Walsh talks about it. It's about his footwork. He says, you know why you felt yourself waiting for that guy to come open? Because the play wasn't ready yet. You took, instead of a 5-step drop, you took 3 steps and a hop. So it threw off the timing of the play. Because by the time you got to your 5th step, that guy should have been making his break, and you can let the ball go because he's going to come clear just as that ball gets there. And that's what guys do. And good defensive players recognize this and jump in those holes that are supposed to be open. So that's how some interceptions happen. That's how the Honey Badgers interception happened. Basically,
Yeah, exactly.
Coming, he jumped it and made a great play. But when you're talking about forcing into triple and quadruple coverage, when you're talking about doing things outside of where the play is supposed to be, taking a shot at the guy who's covered to try and get the big play versus taking the open guy, That's poor decisions. And I think that's what you're seeing right now with these turnovers. 17-yard get you the fire hydrant. I like that.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, and it's not poor coaching that's causing the players to miss blocks or run half-ass pass patterns out of the backfield if you're wearing number 41. Did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Or drop passes or drop interceptions. Yeah, it's not poor coaching that does that. It
Right.
is poor coaching that fails to adjust to what a team is doing. It's a combination of poor coaching, player motivation, and leadership that causes you to get pushed around and just your ass physically kicked by inferior teams like Atlanta and Carolina. Poor preparation when you come out of the gate slow. It's poor coaching when you have pressured Kirk Cousins with 4 or 5 pass rushers all game long. And when the game is on the line and you have a shot to either win it or at least go to overtime, you then decide to blitz and put one-on-one coverage on Justin Jefferson. That's poor coaching. So, and Alan and I were talking about this just before we came on the air. I have been critical of the coaching since week 1 against Atlanta, against Tampa Bay, and against Carolina. I was surprised at the lack of criticism on Dennis Allen and the coaching staff over the first 3 weeks. And then against Minnesota, with the exception, my opinion, with the exception of that final drive that I'm talking about, that long play to Jefferson that set up the Minnesota winning field goal ultimately. Outside of that, I thought the coaching staff did their finest job of the year, and yet now the criticism is just flying out of the woodwork. So that part baffles me a little bit. In other words, and we're both saying this, Alan, it's not all on Dennis Allen. It's certainly not all on Jameis Winston. It's not all on the offensive line. I mean, this is all in all. And because it's a wholesale effort, this is the mark of a bad team. And the Saints are a bad football team right now.
Well, one of the things I felt, this team oversold its talent level when as soon as they signed Tyrann Mathieu and Jarvis Landry, and they drafted Chris Olave and Trevor Penning, I felt that the fans went from, because you think about how they were talking about us after the after free agency started, and we started on Deshaun Watson, which is a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing not to deal with that crap and him being suspended, but it's a bad thing because the reason why teams were after him, he's a franchise quarterback. I'm sorry, he just is. He's a jerk. He's a disgusting person, but he's a franchise quarterback. All right. And then we lost Teron Armstead and we lost Marcus Williams in free agency. People were talking about how this team is worse now than it was prior to free agency starting, prior to the 2021, compared to the 2021 team. Those 4 moves that happened in the draft and in free agency convinced everybody, or they talked themselves into believing this is going to be a Super Bowl contending team without Sean Payton, which I thought was ridiculous. And when we were talking about Jameis Winston being an MVP candidate, I said, I'm going to tell you what, I don't care what the hell he does. If he gets the MVP before Drew Brees ever got one, I'm going to be pissed off.
Yeah.
Because that's a slap in the face of Drew Brees. It's not a knock on Jameis. To me, it's a slap in the face of Drew Brees because unless Jameis leads the league in yardage, completion percentage, touchdowns, and has next to no interceptions, and nobody else is even close to him, so he's the obvious MVP choice, I'm going to get pissed off because Drew Brees did all of that, just not the same season, but did that all through his career and got denied in 2011, 2018, 2006, 2009. Pick your years. He got denied that because of reasons. So, that was going to piss me off. But to have people talking like that, I'm like, guys, you really need to go back and look at how this team looked in 2021. And to me, this team looks a lot like the 2021 team with some more talented players at the receiving core. But as far as how they are playing and inconsistently and making mistakes and things like that, it reminds me of that 2021 team. And we thought it was, and injuries. We have a lot of injuries in this team, just like we started out in 2021. But we all thought it was the receivers. And it's like, no, there's something else going on here. So, yes, I think Dennis Allen does deserve criticism because I don't think this team focuses enough on the details that Sean Payton seemed to thrive on. Because, like we talked about last week, that was his thing. He put out my Facebook. Fortunately, throws memories every day, and now it's football season. My good, bad, and uglies from previous years are showing up. And one from 2016 showed up. And I talk about how Sean Payton put yo-yos in the lockers of all the players because of their play. It go week to week, yo-yo play. Look incredible one week, look terrible the next, and that stuff. So that's the part where I'm like, okay, so it's not Allen. If we still had Sean Payton, we probably would see some of these same things popping up. But, it's one of those things that there's something fundamentally wrong with the players. They're not buying in. They're not focused on what's going on. And I don't know how to fix that part.
I think that's very clear. And I was one of the ones that started to buy into, hey, I think that this team is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Now, to be fair, I was also sitting there telling people, look, this team, this group is more talented than people think before the signing of the two LSU players are the ones that put it over the top for most Saints fans.
Absolutely.
Let's call it for what it is. And no disrespect to LSU lovers. Alan and I like to poke fun at you, but it's no disrespect intended. I really bought in when they drafted Olave and added Trevor Penning, who, remember, folks, has yet to play it down because of injury. I thought it was huge getting a healthy Michael Thomas back. And so the first couple games it was. Michael Thomas is far from the problem here. I thought it was huge getting Marcus May as a replacement to Marcus Williams, et cetera, those kind of things. But you're right. Something on in every facet, offense, defense, special teams, on the sidelines, in the huddles, something is not clicking with this group right now. And I don't understand it because fundamentally it's still much of the same core that made legitimate runs in 2017, 18. I'm not going to say 2020 because that team was put together with not smoke and mirrors, but tape and paper clips because they drugged themselves to the finish line. It wasn't just Drew. But even then, we saw that team play with a lot of pride. They won games because they weren't beating themselves in 2020. 2020, they lost games because they didn't have enough to compete with the big boys. Jimmy Gumbo Landry's been hurt. Let's give him some caveat here. But 2020 they drugged themselves to the finish line. But again, this is a lot of that same core. DeMario, Thomas, Pete, Ramczyk, McCall. We know the names. I'm not gonna waste minutes by running them down. And those are the guys, and Alan pointed it out at the beginning of the show, and I seconded it. Those are the guys that are struggling as much as anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. It's, I'm not 2018 highlights running behind us right now, and you just look at the focus and the execution and the way that team responded. Even when things were going bad, like the Washington game should be coming up in a minute. The Washington game where, it was just like just one of those days where nothing's going to go right. And then they put together that drive, those two drives, and then end up going to overtime and win that ball game. That never say die attitude. You see it a little bit. You've seen it a little bit in the Atlanta game. You see it a little bit in the fact that they start scoring all these points in the fourth quarter, but they don't come out that way. And there were times where they came out that way and just took it to them. The Bengals game from 2018 is a good example. The Buffalo game from 2017, where they just take it to teams. You're just not seeing that stuff. And it's easy to blame the coaches. It's easy to blame the quarterback because they're the guys that get the most visibility. Right. But you mentioned Alvin Kamara, and maybe the injury's affecting him, but Alvin Kamara doesn't like himself. We haven't even talked about the special teams yet, but Deontay Hardy putting that ball on the ground, then you look at his body language. He looks like he's mentally checked out of the game.
Yep.
And, most of the time he's just signaling fair catch before he even gets a chance to look at the coverage. And he stands there for a minute waiting for the defense to come up to him. He's not taking a chance until late in the game. And then he starts running the ball out. It looks like there's something going on that players just aren't. They're not bonding. They're not enthusiastic like they have been. I don't know what it is, and it can't be all of Sean Payton's personality being pushed to these players, because Payton, if anything, Payton was allowing that stuff to happen. To allow those players the freedom to dance in the locker room and turn into a nightclub after a win, and doing all those things. It's almost like there's something missing, something emotional thing that's missing. And I don't know what it is. I really don't.
Is this week a must-win?
Yeah. Only because I said, I've mentioned that before in my good, bad, and ugly. It looks like Hardy is doing pretty much why Chauncey Gardner-Johnson isn't here, except Chauncey Gardner-Johnson wasn't going to shut up about it. Hardy, right. I've said this before. Hardy had two choices. Hardy and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had two choices. Listen, if the Saints aren't going to pay you, play your ass off for another team to give you a contract, or pout and sulk and give half-ass efforts. And then Chauncey Gardner-Johnson take one step further. I'm going to pout, sulk, give half-ass efforts, and I'm going to tell you shit the whole time about it. Well, if you pay me, maybe I might play better. That kind of shit. Well, you can't have that. Where Hardy just looks like he's mentally checked out. And that's why Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had to go. But Deontay Hardy hasn't yet. But he's going to end up talking himself off this team. And for an undrafted free agent, that's a hell of a gamble.
Yeah, it is.
They gave you a shot. And you're looking like you don't even want to be here because you feel like they're not paying you enough. And I just don't understand that mindset. I understand getting frustrated. I understand getting pissed.
Sure.
And everything else. But yeah, Tampa's 2-2, and Brady's getting divorced. I sent Cats in the Cradle on a post about Tom Brady. I'm like, here, Tom, this is for you. This song's written for you because, you've just pretty much proven that, football is more important than your kids growing up. And, you look at Drew Brees and how everything was about his kids. And I think that's part of the reason why he quit television too.
I think so.
Aside from the fact that his personality wasn't great for TV, which is not an insult. Joe Montana was terrible on TV. John Unitas. We can go down the list. They're great players that were terrible on TV. Um, but you know, I think Breeze wanted to do the Sunday night gig because he knew that's it. I'll be there for one weekend, one night. I'm not flying all over the damn country. I'm going to be in Los Angeles and I live in San Diego. That's a hop, skip, and a jump. I'm back home by Monday morning for the kids to go to school. But yeah, Tom is going to enjoy the Saints 2019-2020 seasons because he's got a partially torn rotator cuff now. Getting beat up, dragged all the way down to a wild card round and lose to a team like the Giants in the wild card. That's where he's headed.
One could hope.
Yeah, and that's your final season. You're not going out as a Super Bowl champion. You could have, but you had to come back one more year. I didn't know that. Calvin says Hardy and CD are best friends. That makes sense. I did not know that, but that would make
me
sense.
Either.
But going back to your initial question, I do think this is a must-win because next week is another home game against the Bengals. That game I was already frustrated and upset about from the standpoint of I know what that crowd is going to look like.
Yeah.
If the Saints are 1-4,
especially now.
Yeah. If the Saints are 1-4 and the Bengals are now looking like an up-and-coming team, that stadium is going to be full of people. And here we go, Calvin. It's going to be full of people in half Bengal, half LSU jerseys. It's going to look like LSU home game between Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. That's going to feel more like a home game for the Bengals than the Saints if they don't win against Seattle. And not only do they have to win against Seattle, they have to play well and win against Seattle. Let me ask you this then. I'm assuming you're going to think that you're going to think, I know this is a must-win game for the Saints too, but Geno Smith, is he what everybody thought Jameis Winston was going to be this year?
I think he's what everybody hoped that Jameis Winston was going to be this year. Because Geno Smith has been slightly mistake prone throughout his career, without a doubt, unremarkable throughout his career. Geno never had the tools that Jameis had on his best day. But the reason why I said that Geno Smith is what a lot of people hoped Jameis Winston would be, because Geno Smith is leading the NFL in completion percentage, 77%. I mean, that's Drew Brees numbers. He's thrown for 1,037 yards. I mean, this Seattle offense, who we were all making fun of coming into the year, outside of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, this Seattle passing offense is 12th in the league. That's 246 yards a game. That's not on par with what the Saints are doing, but it's close. Geno's thrown 6 touchdowns. Geno's been sacked 6 times, but outside of that, he's not hit and holding on to the ball too long. He's getting the ball out of his hands. Yeah, Matt, that's exactly everything that I just said. Geno's getting rid of the ball on time. He's getting rid of the ball quickly. He's taking what the defense is giving him. He's getting the ball into the hands of his playmakers, and doing so with a chance for them to make a play. So that's why I said that Geno Smith is everything that a lot of people hoped Jameis Winston could be, because he's checking off all the boxes of what the Saints want / need out of their quarterback position.
Exactly. I certainly feel that way. You look at those stats. Calvin made the joke. He's not throwing 70-yard bombs every play. He's running the offense, and he's running the offense knowing that he doesn't have to be the man. All he has to do is get the ball in the hands of DK Metcalf, get the ball in the hands of Tyler Lockett, and trust his team. Now, their defense is garbage.
Yeah.
But he's doing what it takes to win football games. He's not going to be the reason they lose a game. And I think, this is one of those things that it's frustrating because you feel like the Saints are far more talented than Seattle. And yet Seattle is doing all the things. And they were all talking about how Pete Carroll's got to go. Pete Carroll's an idiot. Pete Carroll's old. But Pete Carroll is doing the things it takes to, he was tanking the season. That was my favorite. He was tanking the season because they want a high draft pick and they can build their team around a new quarterback because they had to get rid of Russell Wilson. So it's one of those things that Pete Carroll's shown he's a pretty damn good coach and that he knows what he needs to do to win a football game. And he's going to do it. They did bail on Geno because of Jets stink, but he stinks too. He's not a good quarterback. He is a career backup that is having a great season, a Matt Tannehill kind of season. And their offensive line is playing better than the Saints' offensive line. The Saints, and I've talked about this too, they got 3 first-round draft choices and a second-round draft choice. When Penn comes back, it's another first-rounder. So they've invested heavily in that offensive line and not getting the results that Seattle's getting. It sure feels like it. Russell Wilson probably thinks that way. Okay. One of the last things I wanted to bring up, because it's been all over Twitter for the past 2 days. Latavius Murray, sorry. Latavius Murray. I'm thinking Levante David. Latavius Murray was signed by the Denver Broncos on Monday, and people didn't understand what happened. Can you explain what happened in that game what happened with Murray? Or do you know?
Yeah, no, I do know.
Okay.
And I had to have part of it explained to me as well, to make sure I understood correctly, by our own John Hendricks. Because I said the same thing initially, when the news came out. Now, I'm the one that put together the article, for our network. I was like, wait a minute, you mean they sent him back to the practice squad? But that's not what happened, folks. Murray was activated for the game on Sunday, as you all know, because he did play extremely well. After that, there is a small window where a player that had just been activated is still it's kind of similar to a waiver claim, where other teams can poach him. So he's technically practice squad. During that interim, the Saints did go to Latavius Murray, and this is now reported by numerous sources. The Saints did go to Latavius Murray and offer him. They basically said, Latavius, we do want you on the 53. Now, to do that, they would have had to release someone. Since all that cannot happen immediately after a game, I mean, that's against NFL rule. You can't just cut a player on the plane, as the saying goes. That's why there was that small window of opportunity for other teams to technically poach Murray, because he was then technically a practice squad member. But anyway, the Saints did say to Murray, we do want you on the 53, but they gave him the opportunity. You can deny, and Latavius did. He said, I had an offer from Denver. I'm paraphrasing. I had an offer from Denver. Latavius no doubt feels that he could get more playing time in Denver than he can in New Orleans, which makes sense because Denver just lost their own starting back, Javonte Williams, to an ACL. Presumably, knock on wood, Alvin Kamara is going to come back healthy, or he's going to come back. When Kamara is in the lineup, Kamara is going to get the bulk of the touches, folks. That's not going to change. So Latavius no doubt has a better opportunity in Denver. So on one hand, I credit the Saints for having the class and the respect for the player, the man, Latavius. We want you here, but if you feel you have a better opportunity somewhere else, we understand. Some organizations would have been, nope, we're forcing you to stay. We're going to cut player X and plug you into the practice squad place. So that's I'm dumbing it down a little bit. But that's basically what happened. So it's not that the Saints gave him away. They kind of didn't have a choice, and Latavius kind of wanted to leave.
Yeah, I've been explaining to a lot of people this way. The league has allowed you now. You can elevate people from the practice squad, even though there's still a member of the practice squad to play on game day, especially for injuries. That say a player is, you expect them to play in a game like Alvin Kamara. You expect him to play in a game. You're going to try and practice each week, and Friday you realize, you know what, he can't go. He's out. But rather than put a guy on IR or cut somebody to make room to fill in that one guy, that one spot, they allow you to elevate somebody for the practice squad just for that one game. They're still a practice squad member. And like you said, they can't do a transaction until Tuesday. So there's that window where you can grab somebody, because you can grab anybody off a practice squad. And I see Calvin, you and Matt are talking about Chris Harris. Saints just did the very thing. They grabbed somebody from somebody else's practice squad and put them on their practice squad. You can do that, and you have that window where you can do that. So people were just shocked because Murray seemed to be the best player on offense Sunday. And here he is, he's gone Monday, and people were just like, what the hell? They don't know what they're doing. It's like Frank Costanza when George Steinbrenner comes to talk about George being dead. He says, what the hell you trade Jay Bueller for? Which I love that scene, because
me too.
That I'm like, can you imagine John Meekum coming to console a Saints fan that their son died, and somebody says, what the hell did you sign J.D. Roberts for? What the hell? You don't know what the hell you're doing. So, it was that. That was me. I bet anybody who's a Yankees fan, George Steinbrenner on that, which is Larry David, but George Steinbrenner sequences on Seinfeld was some of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
Lots of work, George. I got to go through all the managers I fired. Billy Martin. He leaves Billy Martin about 5 times. That's great. Bucky Brooks, Billy Martin. Yogi Berra, Billy Martin. It's just great. That just yes, I vaguely remember Todd Davis. The Saints and Sean Payton did try and break the rules. Sean Payton, this is, and I think this is why people were mad at Dennis Allen, because they feel like Sean Payton would not have let Murray go. He would have found a way to keep him there, break his phone, do something so you can't go away. Tell the Broncos you're not getting him. He's hurt. They put him on IR, temporary IR, just to keep him going. Do something like that, because Peyton was trying to figure out, and thank God they couldn't do this, because Jadeveon Clowney would have been a disaster on this team. But they were trying to figure out a way to trade for, if I remember this scenario right, trade for Clowney, but Browns would get a pick if they kept part of the salary or something like this, and they were trying to do something in the league like, no, you're not doing this kind of thing. But that's how Sean Payton was operating. So, yes, he was petty. And that's what my son's just flashing up there about Payton, what he told Reggie's agent.
Matt, that's well known. That's in Payton's book. It's one of the best excerpts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I did read that. Well, the part I always remember in Peyton's book is when he interviewed with Al Davis. Um,
Yes.
that is so memorable, and it really showed you how far gone Al Davis was because
Also, yes.
you're in this long interview, and Sean's talking about that, and he's starting to get a little hungry, and Al says, "You want to go get something to eat for dinner?" So Peyton's like, "Sure." You're trying to be polite, and think you're going to go to this nice restaurant to go eat because that's what the Saints do when they're courting
Hmm.
people. They take them to the nice New Orleans restaurants. He orders cheeseburgers, have
Right.
cheeseburgers, bro. And after that whole long spiel, Peyton goes back and Parcells says, "Well, how was it?" And Peyton explained, he says, "Now you know why that's a bad organization. Now you know
Yep.
why they're losing." And that's exactly it. So the same thing with this story here. Peyton told Reggie Bush's agent says, "Okay, you're not going to go to Houston. The Jets are third in the draft. We should try and go to New York. It's a much
Hmm.
larger market, more commercial opportunities, all these other
Hmm.
things." And to call up Sean Payton and say, "Look, we would rather you draft somebody else. We would really like to go to New York." And Payton had two words for you: "F you," and slam phones back there, but slams the phone down. And hey, that's Sean.
Yep.
Part of the reason why I loved him so much. I mean, I know
Yeah.
he's a wild cat and everything else, but all the things that Sean did, and we talked about this before, all the things that Sean did to this organization, he really learned well from Parcells,
Hmm.
and yeah, that's why I was comfortable with Dennis Allen being the head coach. And I'm going to ask
Same.
you this last question of the night: do you still think Dennis Allen was the best hire they could have made of these coaches?
Wow.
I know it's a hell of a question to end the night with, but
It is. First of all, folks, they're not going to fire Dennis Allen in the middle of the season. They're just not. And things would really, really, really have to go south. And I'm talking Urban Meyer level, Bobby Petrino level, for Dennis Allen to be gone after 1 year. Um, I'm going to tentatively say yeah. And it's not because I think Dennis Allen's doing a good job, because I most decidedly do not. Uh, but I do think that the continuity that Peyton instilled in this entire organization, can still be salvaged. All of those guys, Allen, Carmichael, Ryan Nielsen has been there for 6 years. Doug Marrone is back. Zach Strief played for Peyton. All of that is still trickled with it well, ingrained within the coaching staff. We need for it to come out. Whatever disconnect, and there goes that word again. Whatever disconnect is happening between players, young players, leadership, and coaches, it's going to come together. These guys just had a long, long overseas trip, because remember, they have been in London since last Monday.
Mhm.
Uh, that's a lot of bonding time. And when you have that kind of opportunity to get together to rekindle that closeness, if it does indeed still exist, it doesn't always manifest itself like that in 1 week. We did see the Saints play remarkably better. And I agree with you. I think Seattle Minnesota was as close to a must win as a week 4 can get. Seattle, if you have any illusions of a playoff chase whatsoever, this is a must win 100%. And just get the W. But I think I would not be surprised if the Saints come out of here with a blowout win, or at least playing extremely well. I have a feeling that this kind of trip, this London trip, could trigger some sort of turnaround. It might take a couple weeks to manifest itself, because you got the Bengals, the Ravens on the horizon. Those are going to be tough outs. So I'm going to tentatively say that I would still, knowing what we know now, I would have still hired Dennis Allen if I couldn't get Doug Peterson. I would have still hired Dennis Allen out of all the other candidates, because I love what Sean Payton instilled in this coaching staff, and who better to keep it than the remainder of Payton's coaching staff.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. The coaches they interviewed were underwhelming at best.
I wanted Peterson. I won't lie, but next to Peterson, and I like Bieniemy as an offensive mind. I don't know about the head guy on the sidelines. So I just don't.
Well, I feel like, and Ralph Marlboro said this, I've said it before too. I feel like Carmichael and Bieniemy are a lot alike.
Yeah.
They both had that personality of you're just a figurehead that the head coach is really the one just running and designing this offense. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I was like, nah, I'm a pass on Bieniemy. Um, uh, and plus, I mean, what makes that offense work is Patrick Mahomes. Unless you're bringing Patrick Mahomes with you, that offense
Right.
is not going to look like what you call it, the Kansas City Chiefs. Peterson, my thing about Peterson was Super Bowl winning coaches going to a new franchise, a new team, rarely turn out to be as good or better than the team they left.
You're right.
Look at George Seifert, Hank Stram, Mike Ditka. I had some other coaches in mind before the show started that I thought about. But
Reeves had a tiny bit of success. Shanahan had very little. Parcells is the only one you can point to that had success.
Yeah.
But even that wasn't the level of success that he had with the Giants. He didn't win another Super Bowl either.
No, he didn't win one. He got to one with New England.
Yeah.
He got to the AFC Championship game with the Jets, and he got to the playoffs with Dallas. It was a descending level of success. But for the most part, the only guys who've actually turned Jimmy Johnson's Dolphins. That's the one I was thinking of. Jimmy Johnson's Dolphins. His last game, Marino's unfortunate last game, was a blowout in the playoffs by the Jaguars over the Dolphins. That's how Marino went out. That's how Jimmy Johnson went out. So I think that's why I looked at Peterson's tenure after the Super Bowl with the Eagles, and it really goes south quickly. Part of it is a quarterback issue.
Right.
Carson Wentz was never the same quarterback he was their Super Bowl year. And you went with Nick Foles, and Nick Foles is that streaky guy who can get you some wins if he's peaking right, but he's not your 16-game starter. So that was part, and then injuries too. But, people, I mean, they really ran him out of town. So I'm curious to see how he pans out. But, Aaron Glenn right now, is he still the defensive coordinator for the Lions?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and that's one of the worst defenses in the league right now.
Yes.
I mean, I'm being brutally honest. The Lions lead the league in points, scoring points, offense, and they're the worst defense in the league. Okay. And the special teams coach was one of the ones they interviewed. Well, look at the special teams for the Saints. What a disaster. Right. I mean, boneheaded penalties, out-kicking your coverage. Lutz made a 60-yard field goal, but he's 4-7 on field goals. He's got an extra point blocked or field goal blocked. Right? So, I mean, it's Mike Dicker with the Saints is a great example. Mike Dicker was also away from the game, too. But, Mike Dicker with the Saints. But, the only ones I can really think of who got better were like Don Shula after he lost the Super Bowl, that kind of thing. But for the most part, those coaches never managed it. And Dick Vermeil is somebody else who got better. Dick Vermeil lost the Super Bowl with the Eagles in 1980. He won a Super Bowl with the Rams in 1999. We took a long break in between. So, it's for the most part, though, these guys just never bounce back the way they were. So I'm always leery of retreads. And yes, Dennis Allen's a retread too. But just like with Parcells and Payton, I thought Allen being around Payton and his Parcells like influence taught Allen how to be a better head coach and not make the same mistakes that you made. And to me, the jury's still out on him. I
Oh
still
yeah.
think the best hire, though, of the people they interviewed. So, uh, yeah, Andy Reid got better. Andy Reid did win the Super Bowl after losing one. You're right. I forget about Andy Reid. But he, again, it's a rarity. You know, for the Mike Holmgren was never the same after he won the
No.
Super Bowl with the Packers. You know, look at his tenure at Seattle. Then he was
Yeah.
GM in Cleveland. I mean, it's just this. There's very for every Andy Reid, you've got two or three Dickas. George
Hmm.
Seiferd's the biggest one that pops to my mind. Uh, Wins the Super Bowl with the 49ers, a loaded team. That's Bill Walsh's team. Goes to Carolina and is not only a bad coach, one of the worst coaches in Carolina Panthers history. And that's not a big history. So
Mm.
it's tough. It really is because things just fall. So much of winning the Super Bowl to me now, I'm convinced, is luck.
Oh yeah.
Um, balls bounce your way, and you stay very lucky as far as health. And as long as those two things happen, you got a great chance of winning a Super Bowl. Um, Giants should had no business winning that Super Bowl against New England. We beat the
Neither
crap out
one
of
of them.
2011. Yeah, same thing with 2008. We beat the crap out of them in 2011, and they were talking about firing the coaches and blowing that team apart, and they peaked in the playoffs and
Hmm.
won a Super Bowl. You know, never would have guessed something like that ever happening. So I guess that's a positive thing for the Saints. Who knows? We're talking about it like right now, and they could go on a run and suddenly have a shot at getting in the playoffs, peaking
Hmm.
in January, which would be pretty good because the Eagles look like the best team in the league right now.
Right.
And I do not want to give them a top 5 pick.
No.
Um, Bob, what you got coming up on the Bayou Blitz?
Uh More post-mortem from London. Yeah, previewing the Saints game. And I don't want to reveal the name quite yet because I have to confirm in the morning. But unless something weird happened, Brendan and I will have a special guest. And the only thing that I will tell you is that he has the letters HOF after his name. He is a Saints Hall of Famer. So we've had him on before. But we're excited to get him back. Like I said, I got to confirm with him tomorrow morning. So I'd feel silly if I had dropped the name right now and something
Oh yeah,
happened.
I didn't
Uh,
show up.
yeah. But we're excited. Either way, we're going to put out the best product that we can for you. And try to do what Alan and I did tonight, and we'll be honest, but we'll try to paint a positive spin going forward too.
Absolutely. I mean, in the Saints do have the talent to turn this around. I think it's to the point where the leaders need to step up and make
Mm-hmm.
the statement that we're not going to make any more mistakes. We're going to be focused,
Exactly.
and we're going to take care of the football and do all the little things to avoid the penalties. I can live with the pass interferences. I can live with the illegal contacts and that kind of stuff. I can't live with the false starts. I can't live with uh, delay a game penalties, things like that. That's just mental problems. So you've got to stay focused. Yeah, here we go. Bob Rose Hall of Fame is on every week. There you go. There you
Thank
go.
you, Mr. Butler. I appreciate that.
Yes. And we'll see if Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara play this week. I have a
Mhm.
good feeling about Kamara. I do not have that feeling about Thomas, but we'll see. We'll see on this. I think if Dalton starts and he gets Kamara and Thomas, we have a great shot of winning. This is not a knock on Jameis, but I think if Jameis comes back next week or this week, it's probably too soon. He needs a few weeks off to get that
Agreed.
back right. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time. We're Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.